You are listening to Para X.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Hey, merry meet everybody, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron here on the Para X Radio Network. Tonight we're going to talk about ghosts and investigations and all kinds of stuff with my guest, Henry Foister. Now, Henry is a paranormal investigator, but he's also the host of the Paranormal View here on Para X. And I figured it was high time that he find himself sitting in the guest chair on the other side of the mic for a change. So, Henry, welcome to Stirring the Cauldron, and how does it feel to be sitting in the hot seat?
Well, I'm still sitting in the same seat that I always sit in. But thanks for having me come on tonight.
Well, I've been meaning to for a really long time, and it just worked out. Thank goodness that you were free, and I could bring you in.
Well, that's good.
And I think it's good sometimes for our listeners, and you've got a ton of listeners over on the Paranormal View, and we share many of them. But they just hear you as the host, one of the hosts of the View, but they don't know much about you. I think that's one thing that a lot happens in radio, that people hear you every week, but they really don't know exactly who you are. So I think, this is kind of a good time to sort of introduce you on the opposite end of the thing, not the host, but the guy. And I think we should probably start out by talking about your interest in the paranormal. How did you become an investigator? Did you always have an interest in things that go bump in the night, that kind of thing?
Absolutely not. When I was young, my mom and grandma come from the foothills of eastern Kentucky, Appalachians, foothills of the Appalachians. And the place where my grandma lived was haunted. And they would always be talking about the old home and the stories of the ghosts and things that took place there. Well, my mom and grandma and my aunt would get together sometimes on the weekends, and they would start talking about that. Well, I was only like 5 maybe, but I would get so scared that I would not go to bed by myself. I mean, that's the way it was. So I was always afraid of anything haunted, ghosts or anything like that. Even an old building, if it looked like it had a ghost in it, you couldn't get me in the front door. So as I grew up, I didn't pay too much attention to stuff like that anymore, even though it was still in the back of my mind. One day my wife was talking to me and said, "You need to watch this show." And she said it's called Ghost Hunters. And I said, "I don't need to see nothing about no ghosts." She said, "Well, it's real interesting. You ought to watch it." So I agreed. I sat down, started watching it, and they were using a K2 meter for the first, well, I don't know if it was the first time they was using it, but it was the first time I seen it. Mm-hmm. And they started asking questions, and then the lights would light up like they was getting answers to these questions. And I started thinking, if that's really, if they can really do that and communicate with the dead, it shows you that, yes, they are still there. And I got interested by watching that. So that kind of got me into it. And then I started looking around to find places on the internet. And I come across a place called CAPS, which was Kentucky Area Paranormal Society. When I got on their site and started reading around, they said, "Oh, listen to live shows." I said, "Oh, really? That might be interesting." So I clicked on it and found Para X, started watching or listening, I should say, and I was just amazed that all these people was talking about the paranormal. And the more I listened and everything, I become real good friends with Dave and Tom. And eventually they was wanting to know about a place up close to me to investigate. Well, when we did that, I went and got the phone number for him, and he said, "When we get this set up, we want you to go with us." I says, "Yeah, right." Well, Tim Shaw was one of the ones that went there with us. And, of course, I had to have, I wouldn't go anywhere by myself. And so before we went to do the investigation, we all went out to dinner. And Tommy said, "We got this show on Friday night called The Paranormal View, and it doesn't have a host. We need to get somebody so it can have some construction." Mm-hmm. And he says, "I know just the person to do it." He said, "Henry." I says, "Me? I know nothing about ghosts. I know nothing about radio. Why me?" Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I agreed to it, and you might say the rest was history.
Well, I remember when Tommy came up with the concept of the Paranormal View, and he and I did the first couple shows, and then we rotated hosts. All the Para X hosts would take a week, and a week, and a week, and a week. And then, but it was so scattered at that point because everybody had a different point of view, no pun intended. So I remember Tommy was talking to me. He says, "We really need to get somebody in here because a lot of people did the show once or twice and then they were just too busy to do it again." And, it was a good concept. It was a really good concept. So I was glad that he asked you and that finally it had a home.
Well, I've been doing it since 2008. I started out with Beth Brown as my co-host. Mm-hmm. She did it for 2 years, but she had so many other things that she was involved in. She just couldn't do it anymore. So when she dropped off, I asked Craig Rupp to come in and be my co-host. And he did. We were doing okay, but he said there was going to be times he wasn't able to do the show, and I didn't really want to do it by myself. So I hit up on a guy by the name of Jeffrey Gould. I said, "Jeff, you want to be a co-host? That way I got two people, so if one's not there, I at least have another one." He jumped right on it and really wanted to do it. So the first show that we had with Jeff was totally bad. I mean, I didn't get it recorded, but it's the show where his girlfriend had a meltdown live on the show.
Oh, wow. God, you missed the good stuff, Henry.
Oh yeah, it was funny because it all went out over the air. I mean, she
Oh,
was
wow.
at him and carrying on. Yeah, oh no, that was a funny show, but we didn't get it done. So then after that, we decided, well, we need somebody else because Craig ended up having to drop off. So that's when I went and I asked Barbara Duncan to do it, known as Ceiling Cat, and I asked Cat Cloco to come on. I'd seen her at different conventions 2 or 3 different times. She'd been on our show as a guest 3 or 4 times. And when I asked both of them, they both really were enthused and glad that I asked. And I tell you, I have the best set of co-hosts a show could have. And we all work great together. Each one does different things, so I don't have to do everything. And I really enjoy it doing it like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and see here, those of us that are solitaries, I'm a solitary witch and a solitary host, and it's really funny because when back in the day, every so often I would ask Tommy to co-host, and we would be both stepping on each other's toes, getting in each other's way, and it was funny, but and even now with Tim, when we do the Reverend Witch, it's hard not to interrupt or one talk over the other. So I honestly don't know how you do it with 4 of you. I really don't.
Well, I don't know. It just meshes pretty good. I usually try to open the show and maybe ask 2 or 3 questions, and then I just kind of back out and let everybody else talk.
Okay, well, that's a sign of a leader for sure. Okay, we'll get the ball rolling, and you guys just take it and go running with it.
But one of the good things is most of the guests that we have, you can ask a question and they'll talk for 7-8 minutes without you having to say anything else. So that's a great way to do it too. I like to listen to them do the talking. So,
well, let's be real. It really is about the guest and not us. We're just kind of the glue that holds the show together, but it's the guest that makes the show.
Right. Very true.
And it's kind of important to, it's really important to sometimes, I don't know. You kind of never know. For new people, you don't. There are people that you have on once in a while, you know them well, or you've heard them before. And then every so often, I remember a woman who came on and she was talking about runes, which I thought was, that was good. And she was a little bit different. I'm being polite. She was a little bit different. But all of a sudden, she starts talking about animal sacrifice. And so, that really came out of left field. And the chat room, bless them, all got their back up really bad because, we're all animal lovers here. And I, being a host, I think you have to walk a fine line. You can't outright jump down a guest's throat, although some do. But it was really, really hard for me to hold it together when she started talking about that and the butchering of animals and things like that. It had nothing to do with the topic, but she brought it in. I don't even remember why, but I guess the point I'm making is you just never know what you're going to get sometimes.
That's true. And to be gracious and you kind of tiptoe around things. I've had 2 or 3 guests like that where they just come in from left field and you have you can't just stop the show or kick them off. You still have to handle it with kid gloves. But I've had 3 or 4 guests like that. So I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, fortunately, most of them are wonderful. And it's perfect. But just, and I guess maybe that's what keeps us on our toes as hosts. It's the unexpected that fall. When Skype goes wrong, that's okay, not a big deal. It happens.
That happens.
And stuff. But when you get a guest that just goes off the wall, there have been ones that, and I'm sure you've had them too, that were so off the wall that you would kind of have to mute your mic when they were talking because,
right.
it was like, okay, we're in the Twilight Zone now. What do we do? And again, there were only a few of those too, but still, I guess that's what makes it fun in a way about not knowing what is coming and being able to get through it.
Right. People doesn't understand also that to do a show, you don't just call somebody and have them come on the show. You have to do a lot of research, scheduling to get people to come on the show. You have to beat the bushes and really look for the people. And that takes time. Yeah,
well, it does, yeah.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time doing that.
Well, and we spend a lot of time doing homework because, we put ourselves in a position as hosts not to make a complete and total ass out of ourselves on the air.
Right.
So
right.
if you go in unprepared, people are going to say, oh, they're really stupid of her to say that, or, she should have known better or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it's not all lollipops and roses being a host of a show. I mean, you can just imagine how much I had to look up for you today, Henry. I mean, I just, it was a lot of work to figure out what to talk to you about tonight.
Yeah, you probably still didn't find too much.
Oh, I found a lot. Yeah, not scary, but just, just letting you know. Okay, so let's go back for a minute to that first investigation. It was at the Sorg Opera House, I believe.
Yes.
What did you? Because a lot of people when they go on their first investigations after they've watched shows like Ghost Hunters or Most Haunted or whatever. All of a sudden they go, oh my God, well, this isn't what I saw on TV, and it's really kind of boring, and things were happening on the show, and nothing's happening now. I mean, what was your first impression of investigating from that first experience?
Well, actually going on my first experience, the only thing that I had was the flashlight and a recorder. Of course, I had a lot of people around me, Tim and Dave and Tommy, and I mean, there was a whole bunch of people that was on that investigation. Of course, it was an old building, and of course, I was not going to be nowhere by myself. But Tim and I sat up in the balcony for a while, just doing EVP. Of course, I was still looking to see if I could see something or hear something, and never really did. But I was still nervous because I didn't know what I would do if I did.
Oh, Tim would have protected you. Don't you worry.
Yeah, he just said you better be able to run fast.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, yeah. But he would have excused himself first. He is very polite.
Yeah, Tim's great. But so I didn't really get anything very much from the Sorg. There was a few people who had seen some things or heard some things. I didn't get anything. We did go down into the basement under the stage, and they had a table down there, a card table. And Tim wanted to conduct a table raising, tapping thing.
Table tipping.
Yeah. And so there was four of them sat around the table, had their hands up on top of it. And I don't know what Tim was saying, but all of a sudden the table starts moving. And they all ended up having to get out of their chairs. And the table was just going everywhere. And of course, I am looking to make sure nobody is moving that table. The thing about it that really interested me was that's one of the things that my grandma used to say because you had salesmen that would travel the back roads in Kentucky, and a lot of them would walk. They had no other way of getting around. And when it come dark, they would stop at people's houses to see if they had room to put them up for the night. And one of the things, because they didn't have money to pay the people, one of the things that they would do would have the people have their friends come over, and a lot of times they would do this table thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently one was at my grandma's house when she was a little, well, it wasn't a little girl. She was like 14 and, or 15. I guess she was 15. Anyway, this guy took and set her up on top of the table. And he said a few words, and then he would say, table. Knock one time for every year this girl is for her age. And the table would raise up and that leg would go down and start counting. And it counted out 15 times, which she was 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And then he said, okay, table, knock one time for every year it is before this girl gets married. Table raised up, knocked one time. Mm. When she was 16, she got married. So that's the kind of tales that she would tell. And I don't want nothing to do with that stuff. But when Tim and them started doing it and I could see what was going on, I was getting more and more interested into the things of the paranormal.
Mm-hmm. And you carried on. Now, okay, so over the years you've been investigating, and this might not be an easy question to answer. You might have to think a minute. But to date, what's the best piece of evidence you've ever gotten on an investigation?
Well, there's a couple of different things. One, usually I get EVPs, and a lot of the ones that I get are, you might say, Class A kind of, very audible that you can hear what is being said. The only other thing that ever happened to me was when I take it back. There was two things. We was doing the farmhouse, and we were all in the living room. Me and Dave, and I don't know, there was about 7 or 8 people in there. Mm-hmm. I was standing behind the sofa, kind of. And all of a sudden, something reached up and yanked my pants leg twice. Just yanked it real twice. Mm-hmm. And I started laughing, and I said, you guys look and see if there's something back here behind me, a cat or something. And they all started looking. I told them what happened, and one of them started laughing and said, well, you're it. I said, what do you mean? And they said there was supposed to be a little girl there, and they'd said something like to the little girl about, let's play tag. You're it, and you have to tag somebody. And they started saying, she tagged you.
Aww.
So I thought that was real neat. And then another time we was at the Bell Nursing Home. And they had a grid light hanging from not a rafter, but like a rafter, I guess, going across the hall. And it was aimed down the hall. Well, me and Kat and another guy was about 2 doors down from where the grid light was behind us. And the guy starts saying something like, look there. And I'm looking, I don't see nothing moving down in the grid. And he says, no, on the floor. And I looked down on the floor, and coming right down the hallway was one of those green dots. Just kept traveling right down the hallway, right toward me, on my shoe, and halfway up my pants leg. How that happened, I have no idea, because the light was back behind us. Mm-hmm. And of course, when it was happening, I said, what do I do? Do I run? Do I stand still? What do I do?
Yeah, good question.
Nobody knew what was causing it. And it was only one dot. It couldn't have been reflecting off of anything. Mm-hmm. So I have no idea. So those are the only 2 things that I've seen or actually have had happen. Everything else has just been purely EVPs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you have a favorite EVP?
I have quite a few of them. We were doing a house in Middletown, in Franklin. And supposedly there was a little girl in the house, a little girl ghost, and we had a psychic medium there. Mm-hmm. And me and her and Mark was sitting in the living room asking questions. And all of a sudden, the medium says, she says she misses her mommy. And as soon as she said that, you hear a little girl say, Mommy? Mm-hmm. And, of course, I got that as EVP, and I thought that was the neatest little thing. Usually with mediums, when they're saying things, unless you have something like that, you don't really have confirmation. Mm-hmm. But when she said that, and then the little girl, Mommy, right there, she done said it. So I thought that was really neat.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. In the Bell Nursing Home, I had one. We was down in the day room, and all of a sudden you hear a little girl say, "Please wake up." Huh. So I don't know whether someone had died, she was wanting them to wake up, or whether they were asleep and she was trying to get them to wake up. But I get a lot of those types of things, and I think it's really, really neat. The house, the old farmhouse that I used to do all the time, it's been tore down since then. But there was a big old fireplace in the kitchen because it was built in like 1850s, and that was where they did the cooking at. Mm-hmm. Well, the woman that lived there had, I guess, pots and pans. Anyway, when we was doing an investigation, this one girl that was in the kitchen with us asked, "Are these your pots and pans?" And all of a sudden you hear this voice say, "They're not all mine." And, so that was pretty interesting. The woman who lived there, when she heard it, she said, "Oh, that sounds like the man that lived across the street," because they'd been real good friends or neighbors, which was interesting.
Well, it is. And, when you get an EVP that actually answers something that you're referring to, I mean, it's kind of hard to refute that.
Yes. Yeah. I love that confirmation. Mm-hmm. I had that happen at Hillview Manor. Mm-hmm. We did the show live from there. And after we did the show, Kat and I went up and we were in what the cafeteria was, where the people would walk down the thing to get their food. Mm-hmm. I was sick, had a fever, sore throat, and we were standing there, and I said, "I'm sick, got a sore throat, don't feel good. Do you have any hot coffee?" A few seconds, you hear this, "Yeah."
Now, I would have taken that as a ghost having a really good sense of humor. Sure, we do. Yeah, try and get it. That kind of thing. That's how I would take it, because, they do. Shoot. If it was somebody that was a jokester in life, he's joking over there too, But yeah, that's pretty funny. All right, now I've got to ask you this question because it came up in the chat room. Patsy's talking about the cow.
That was at the old farmhouse. Mm-hmm. She was taking painting classes there because they had taken the barn and completely did the barn, remodeled it. And the woman did metaphysical classes there. She did painting, had a gallery and all that. And I would go there all the time just about and go upstairs where the loft was and just sit and ask questions. And a lot of times I wouldn't be there 15 minutes and I'd leave. And, of course, I would have something on it. Mm-hmm. One time when I come back to listen to it, all of a sudden you hear this moo. There's no cows there.
Oh, that's really sweet. See? Kids and animals are attracted to you, Henry, even in spirit.
Yeah, they didn't have any cows then, but they must have used to have some. But it sure did get a moo. That was really neat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go.
I was sitting up in the loft one time, and I just said, "What is your name?" And I didn't hear anything. And all of a sudden, you hear a step, 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 step. Mm-hmm. And then you hear a, "Hey." You could hear boots on a hardwood floor just like it used to be the old loft, but it was all carpeted, so that should have never had anything happen. And with me being the only person there, had to have been somebody there walking. I don't know who it was. I didn't see them. So
that's very cool. So do you have a favorite location that you could go to 1,000 times and still not get enough of?
Yes. There is a house in Middletown. A couple of girls started having us come there. They was having all kinds of things going on in their house. And we was doing it. I think we did it like 3 times the first year we went. And then we was doing it at least once or twice a year after that. And I haven't been back for probably a year, but I'm going to be setting it back up to go this summer. Mm-hmm. We were always getting noises, bangs, smells. I had a recorder in the hall bathroom once, and it picked up where this voice said, Henry. And then a little bit later, it picks it up again, only the second time it was more exasperated, like, Henry, like, I'm trying to talk to you, listen to me. Of course, when you don't hear it until after you go back and start listening to the recorder, it's too late then, but it was pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah. All right, so conversely, is there a place on your paranormal bucket list that you really, really want to investigate, but you haven't for whatever reason?
A lot of people want to go to Waverly. I've been to Waverly 2-3 times with Para-X, and I think Tim Shaw was there once or twice when I was there. Things happened, but I never have gotten the real good EVP from there. A lot of people sees this big, I guess they call it big black or something like that, a big dark shadow. I have never got to see that yet. That was, I wouldn't mind going back again. The only problem with a lot of these locations like this is they charge so much money to be able to go in there to do that. I prefer going to a little lesser known places, and you can get just as much activity for the money, in my opinion. What about you? There's places, I've never been to California, so I don't know what kind of places you have out there.
Oh, we got lots of places out here. I try to stay away from the ones that charge. I kind of like finding the places that are kind of more obvious but not as well known, because I believe that when you go to a place like Waverly or any of these other places that people are just dying to get into, and that probably was a pun, that after a while, the locations kind of get overfished. And if there are spirits there and stuff, they don't care anymore. They don't pay attention. I've told this story before, but I was talking to David Wells from Most Haunted about the Winchester House up in San Jose, California.
Right.
And the Most Haunted team came out from the UK to the Winchester House for a live Halloween special. And they got nothing, practically. I mean, you could sit there, and as I'm watching the show, I'm thinking, oh, they've got nothing. They've got to kill all night and tomorrow night, and they've got nothing. It was obvious. So after the show, I was talking to David, and I said, what happened there? And he says, usually we scout the locations, and every year they send me out to the location of where we were going. This year they didn't send me all the way to California to do it from the UK. We just went on the assumption that this place was haunted because it had such a bad reputation, or good reputation of being haunted. He said, had I come out here, he said, and investigated it ahead of time, I would have told them not to do it for a live show for 2 nights, because there really wasn't anything there. He said, there were spirits around. Was Sarah Winchester there? Yeah, we saw her, but he said they didn't care that we were even there, and there was no way that they paid any attention to us. And I think he said it was overfished. That's the word he used. And now I see that they've got the Winchester House open for investigations to the public.
Really?
And yeah, and they're even allowing alcohol on the premises during that. So what I'm saying is a lot of these places go commercial, and there's just too many people in and out of there. Any spirits that were there and wanted to communicate are now dealing with a bunch of people, especially those that would take alcohol on an investigation, a bunch of people that think it's a dog and pony show and don't know what they're doing and are disrespectful to the spirits, and that drives them away. So, and I think in certain areas, because I know there are places that charge, horrible amounts of money.
Yes.
I think that they also are going to have the spirits there kind of boycott, if that means, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because, to be able to investigate, to be able to communicate with the other side is a privilege. It's not a game. And, the more people that you get in, the greed of some of these people, oh yeah, well I have this place here, and come on, come one, come all, blah, 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 blah. I think it's going to ruin the house. And it's going to take anybody that was in there and they're going to go away. And eventually the people that have these locations, it's going to dry up, because there are plenty of places to investigate in this world that, that don't charge.
True.
And I wrote 3 books on the ghosts of Hollywood. I never had to pay to get into anywhere.
Right.
And the people were happy to tell a story, and they were unknown places. They weren't the same places that people talk about over and over and over again, because how many times can you hear about a certain location? Because the stories always end up being the same because people kind of copycat on them.
Right. And that's the way I feel. The little known places or homes where people has asked you to come in, not something that's malevolent or anything like that, but they just say, oh, I think I've got a ghost or this or that. And you just go in, you can talk with them. And a lot of times you get a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the better places to me to actually go. Now, last year I went to Gettysburg. Mm-hmm. We did our show live from a place called G's Ice Cream. The history and stuff on, because it used to be a house, the history on it was really something. They still had bullet holes in the house from the Civil War. Wow. I learned a lot about Gettysburg that I didn't know before. I thought Gettysburg was all fought out in the fields like little round top and stuff like that. But they were actually fighting in the town. They would be Confederates at one end of the house and Union soldiers on the other end. They'd be shooting through the doors at one another. Mm-hmm. So the more that you go to places like that and the history that you find out, Mr. G said his place was haunted, which it was. He had all kinds of different things that happened there. So hopefully I get to go there again this year and do my show live. If not, I'll be looking for another place in Gettysburg to try and do my show. So.
Gettysburg is a great place. I mean, I've not been there, but any battlefield and something with such emotion and so many casualties and things, it has to be haunted. I mean, it just has to be. And that's what I did with my books, not walking around, but looking around Hollywood. I would look at places I walked by every day and think, wow, I bet that place should be haunted. It's got a good history and blah, blah, blah. And I started asking people, I'd find the owners and say, well, I don't know if you're a believer or not, but, do you have any weird experiences here? And boy, they open up. They love to open up because they're afraid to tell other people because other people think they're crazy. But I got into all kinds of places just by asking. And, because to me, where there is history of any kind, there are spirits. And it's just kind of a fascinating process to find that stuff and go digging. And in my books, I did the history of all the places and the history of the town and everything else. So it just made it more interesting. I think it's always important to know the history of where you're going and what you're doing. It makes a lot of sense in understanding why they may still have spirits there and that kind of thing.
Well, now, is the wax museum there haunted?
It is. It is. Yeah. And see, to me, that's like, it's funny and it's not funny because, okay, the figures, and I've said this before, the figures at that particular wax museum are not all of them recognizable. Some are good, but let me put it this way. There was a figure of John Wayne on a horse, and I didn't recognize John Wayne.
Right.
So, it's just, I don't like, it didn't bother me so much, but, when you're doing lights out and you're in a wax museum, you think about Vincent Price and the movies, Murder in the Wax Museum or whatever it was. There was one figure that its eyes, I swear, was moving and following everybody around. But they have documentation from people that come there to visit who have no interest in the paranormal at all, but take a lot of pictures inside and everything. And when they get back home, at that time developed their film. The office has tons and tons of pictures of like figures and weird things going on. So, yeah, it's conclusively haunted. I mean, I think the story that the Inquirer ran about leaving a reporter of theirs in there overnight by himself, and when they came to open the door the next morning, he was half dead with fear. I think that's kind of BS. That's a little much, but it was creepy. It was. I mean, there were times when we went through this one area, Victoria Gross, she's the medium and she's a team member of mine, fellow witch. And we were walking through an area and she was kind of leading the way for some reason. She said, stop. She goes, I need to cleanse this before we walk through. And she did what we call the banishing ritual of the pentagram, which is to dispel the negative energy. And she wouldn't let any of us, walk through that passageway until she did that. But we also had a case where Victoria was, I'm not going to say possessed, but all of a sudden she was way ahead of us, and all of a sudden she's walking in circles going, help me, I'm lost. And I worked with her enough to know that there was something going on, and I said, well, who are you? And she gave me a name, and I said, well, can we help you? And she says, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. Help me go where I need to go. And so Vicky called in some spirits, angels, or somebody that she knew to come and take this poor lost spirit across. Right. And we did that, and that was kind of creepy. And that in the middle of the wax museum, and my medium's walking in circles saying, "Help me, I'm lost." It's just like.
Did you hear them saying that?
She was like talking through the medium. Yeah.
Wow.
It came out of Victoria, and it wasn't her voice. It wasn't her real voice, and she was looking like a lost soul. Well, she was. But yeah, it was pretty funny. But yeah, it was just strange. But to be in there with the wax things and the ones that were scary only because they were so bad, kind of thing, and
right.
stuff. So it's a little eerie. But yeah, I mean it is that place has such a history. I mean, all of Hollywood Boulevard does, and. Upstairs it's a 2-story building, and upstairs used to be a very famous nightclub where all the celebrities used to go and hang out and stuff. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. But the one place you asked me, the one place in LA that I really wanted to investigate and could not was the Hollywood Bowl, because with that kind of history, can you imagine all the the famous people that performed on that stage.
Right.
And there has to be some kind of, residual energy or some kind of energy there, because everybody in the whole world that was ever famous performed at the Hollywood Bowl, whether they were a singer or a musician or, whatever. And I really, really wanted to go and investigate there, and found out that the bowl is now owned by the LA Philharmonic, and they very much do not want any kind of ghosty stuff going on or know about any kind of like that at the Hollywood Bowl.
See,
so that was
when people says things like that. You wonder if some of them actually have some sort of paranormal episodes, but they don't want to admit it.
Well, I think some things are like that. I think with the Hollywood Bowl, though, LA Philharmonic is a very shishi organization, and very, long hair music and stuff. And they have an image to uphold. And I think in their case, even if they believed it, I kind of get the impression that they just didn't want to lower themselves, if that makes any sense.
Right.
I just kind of got that feeling that it just was something. And then a lot of places will not admit to it because they're afraid that it will drive people away.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of it like that.
Yeah.
But, since the paranormal has become, I won't say forefront, but more openly, a lot of places are more open to it than what they used to be. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think that it's oversaturated, and a lot of the paranormal, I guess, I won't say is dying out, but a lot of groups and stuff, I think, is falling by the wayside.
Mm-hmm. It has its peaks and valleys, and it peaked about 5 years ago was, when it peaked. It's never going to go out of fashion completely, but now I think when people talk about ghosts, and that was one of the things I was going to talk to you about the trends and what are the hot topics, because I know on my show I kind of like to mix things up, so I get guests from all aspects of the metaphysical world. But I remember when we all first started at Para X, the only guests we ever had were ghost hunters, members of teams talking about their latest investigations. You don't see that much anymore of that. No. I mean, ghost experiences are still hot topics, but now the trend seems to be more about hauntings and personal experiences from people rather than from teams of investigators and their evidence. So as far as a show like yours, do you feel that the tide has turned in that respect? And are most of your topics still ghost related, but changed a little bit, or how are you handling it?
We try to not have the same thing over and over and over. We will go from people that reads tarot cards, people that reads color auras, people who's written books. All the topics we try to switch up to where it's never the same week after week. I think it helps keep it fresh, you might say. UFOs is a big topic. A lot of people like UFO topics. Which I'll have one, and then maybe a month later I might have another one, somebody else talking about that. So I tend to do it that way. A lot of groups, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I think a lot of groups want to get on just to talk about the things that they've done, not I guess to further the paranormal, but put a feather in their cap or something like that, you might say.
Sure, yeah.
And that's why I don't try to get a lot of different groups on in that fashion. Now, if it's somebody who is proficient, not with just EVPs, but who can really talk about how they're made, why they're made, the frequencies, and all this. That's something different because now you're finding out more information on all the stuff. So
Right.
I like that a lot better.
Yeah, I think mixing it up is good. And I mean, with me, I mean, I have a lot of pagan guests, but also, I guess the method to my madness in some ways is that I have the witches on, the druids, and the like, because most people view us as mysterious and they don't know much about our ways. And for hundreds of years, that's led to a lot of misconceptions. So, again, the method to my madness is not only to entertain, because they're all from different realms and stuff within the pagan community, but it's just kind of to teach in a sense, to take away the negativity and fear that even in this day and age, lots and lots of people associate that with us. And so I kind of do these shows to open people's minds. So there's lots of methods to madness here, but
True.
what we really, I mean, we're basically here to entertain, but I think it's also important that we pass on knowledge too, wisdom of our guests as well,
Right.
and open people's minds, because not just about witches and stuff, but about UFOs or about, whatever the topic has to be. A lot of people don't know things about it, and all of a sudden you hear it on a show and it's like, wow, and then you want to learn more. So I think that's really important in choosing guests and topics as well.
Well, that's like you. I mean, even though you might have a lot of the metaphysical people like that, each one of them, though, is talking about different things with it. So
Yeah.
you're learning, even though it might be about druids or whatever, your topic might be something else on the druids, and so you're still learning different aspects of it.
And that's the thing. I learn with along with the audience, and that's the thing that I like the best, is because I love to learn and dig things and get information. So it's not just for who's listening; it's also for me. I really enjoy that part of it.
So do we. You'd be surprised at how much I have learned in the few years that I've been doing Paranormal View. Like I said, when I first started, I knew nothing about the paranormal. Didn't even know what kind of questions to ask to start with. Mm-hmm. So Beth guided me quite a bit on how to get the guests and how to do research on them and all those things. So she taught me a lot in the 2 years she was here, and then from there I've just been doing it on my own. But with the three other co-hosts that I have now, they're all hollering, oh, this guest or that guest, and so we get a lot of different input into the show, which I really like.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of guests, who's your guest going to be this week?
We have coming up is Artie Six Killer Clark. Yeah, well, she, I guess, lives like out in the Midwest or Rocky Mountains, I guess. And she is Native American. She has written quite a few books about the natives and the UFOs, which their stories of the Sky People is one of the books, Encounters with the Sky People. And we'll be talking all about that, how the Native Americans have intertwined with the aliens and UFOs.
Oh, wow. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
That's not something you hear every day.
No. So you're looking at it through a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
So time, of course, is slipping away. You guys have 2 hours, so you can get more out than I can. We've only got an hour. So in the last couple of minutes, I want you to tell everyone where they can listen to the Paranormal View, where they can find out more about it, about you, the show, your investigations, where they can listen to podcasts, and whatever else you want to throw in there.
All right. You can listen to us right here on para-x.com radio. We're on Saturday nights from 8 to 10 o'clock Eastern Time. You can go to theparanormalview.com, which is our website. All the information about our shows, about the hosts is right there. You can also go to the Paranormal View on Facebook, and I think it's a community because Jeff runs that. So we list all kinds of, Jeff puts all kinds of different things on there about the paranormal, plus information about the Paranormal View. And on our website, theparanormalview.com, you can also listen to old podcasts. Just click on recent episodes, and it takes you to where you can listen to any one of the ones that we still have up. You can also go to, what's that music place? iTunes podcasts, and look for the Paranormal View. We're also on iTunes. So
you're all over the place.
We tried. I was looking to try and get some of our stuff put on YouTube, but haven't made it that far yet.
It's not hard.
No,
I did it for a while, and then I kind of went, actually, well, it takes a lot of work. It's worth it. And if you do it often enough, it becomes easy. But,
right.
Yeah, but you get distracted, and then, never mind. Anyway, Henry, thank you so much for stirring it up with me tonight. And
I appreciate you asking me to come on. I don't get to sit on this side of the mic very much, but I'm glad you took the time to have me come and talk with you.
So all those things that Tim was scaring you about, now you know that he was not telling the truth, right? I didn't bite, right?
I know that.
But it's his job as my producer to do that. I know that too. So we let him have his fun. Anyway, I'm going to thank everybody else for listening as well. And until next time, everybody, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
This has been another edition of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Be sure to tune in next week at this same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2014. Moonlight Hall by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.